Ready, Andy?
Yeah, I think that's the word, isn't it?
Yep. Andy Scott is a musician and songwriter, best known for being the lead guitarist and backing vocalist for the band Sweet. And he's on the line here just now. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I was just telling you earlier that I don't really go out that much. Hang around the house, walk the dog. It's I live in the middle of nowhere. I gather you're Scottish, and
Yeah.
do you have open spaces near where you live?
Kind of, yeah. Not as much as probably where you live if you're in the middle of nowhere, but certainly more than the middle of a city.
Okay, well, I'm on a ley line between Stonehenge and Avebury Stones, so. It's all a little bit, used to be corn circle country, but they seem to have stopped ever since the guys who used to do them they've died off, I think.
Well, you've got a tour with Sweet coming up later this year, the Unlock the Rock tour. What are you able to tell us about the tour?
We've been building this over the last, I would probably say 6 or 7, maybe even 8 years. We always in December, because by the time you get to that point in the year, December and January are not, should we say, places or there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
So you might as well think about doing things that you want to do, and you might as well stay close to home. So we started off doing like 3 or 4 shows in the UK, doing a mixture of clubs and theatres just about 8 years ago, and it's built to we do 16 shows now every December, and last year was, when you consider 2021, that it was an odd year, that we kept hearing that people's tours kept being cancelled because people within the crew or within the band or one of them went down with COVID. And we thought, how can we make sure that this doesn't happen to us? Yeah. And we were very, very rigid. We kept ourselves to ourselves. We had anything that we wanted was kind of brought in rather than us going out to look for stuff. We were staying in the kind of hotels that you arrive at night and get up and leave before breakfast and pick up something on the road. And we just had to be that rigid, that nobody interfered with our kind of bubble. And it worked. We did all 16 shows, and they were fantastic. I wasn't expecting that many people to show. I think we ended up with something like 75% business, which when you consider that we're in the middle of a pandemic and people weren't really going out, that's, to have 75% capacities is, as our agent and promoter said, it's unheard of, So he was immediately on the phone in January and booked the next tour, the Unlock the Rock tour.
Yeah. And are you going to be planning to maybe be as careful in terms of COVID for this tour, doing the same thing with the hotel or not?
I think so. I think that it's at the moment, I'm not convinced that we are through this completely.
Yeah.
There's always a sting in the tail with these things. I do think that the science and the scientists know, how these things react. And I think that a virus, if it's too strong and it kills off hosts, it's got nowhere to go. So it's bound to dissipate as it goes through, society. So you end up with a version of it that will always be there, like a common cold. The common cold's only been around for like 200 years, and the flu has only been around for just over 100 years, probably.
Yeah.
And we live with them, and people still die from it, So we've got to get it to that point, and as long as we are in a position to have these booster jabs every year, I think we should be fine. I don't like the idea of somebody trying to mess with. I mean, we're seeing already what messing with economics and allowing people with money to kind of do things. We're seeing the outcome of that right now, and I just think that there's got to be a better way of dealing with things like pandemics versus life. there's got to be a better balance. You can't, and you also can't have super rich and super poor. It's got to come together somewhere, you know.
Yeah. Now, in terms of the tour, of course, you're the last surviving member of Sweet now, aren't you? So the lineup will be different apart from you. So who is in the lineup?
It's been like this for the last 2 UK tours. We've got a singer called Paul Manzi. He was with a band called Cats in Space for a few years, and he was our go-to deputy whenever we needed somebody, when either the singer or the keyboard player or the second guitar player, couldn't do the tour or some dates. And I suddenly realized that in Paul we had somebody who was potentially better than the guys that we had in the band. But you don't do ruthless things, or at least I don't. So when the moment came about 3 years ago to make some changes, Paul was obviously on our radar, and at the same time, there were things happening within the band. We knew we needed to become a 5-piece. We couldn't just do it as a 4-piece anymore, because I wanted Paul to be a front man, which is what he is, which is what Sweet always had, a guy out front with just a microphone. And so at the same time, we got a permanent bass player in as well, a guy called Lee Small. So we're now a 5-piece band, and it sounds great. The extra voice certainly helps. Oh, yeah. And the textures of being able to, instead of a guy playing either guitar or keyboards, you've got somebody we can do both now. We can have guitar and keyboards. It's a better system.
Yeah, absolutely. And has this new lineup maybe made you change the set list a bit? Perhaps if maybe the new singer in particular, if some songs suit him better than songs that you did classically, if that makes sense.
It does, and we did. We started to go down the slightly more with the previous lineup, in like from like 2010, 11 through to 2018. We started to lose a little bit of the heavy rock and start to move into the more melodic generated material that we used to do. We used to do an acoustic set in the middle of the set, and we would do all those original bubblegum songs from 1970, 71, which used to, doing it that way with an acoustic guitar, at least it wasn't trying to, recreate something that, would not have been as easy standing up and trying to do it in the normal way. Yeah. So we're going back slightly and delving into some of the rock tracks off albums. And the last single, Everything, was actually from an album in 2002, 20 years ago. And I knew Paul, as soon as he started to sing it, that this would be fantastic. Yeah. It was never picked off that album as a single, and it was as soon as he started to we hadn't even got to the chorus, I kind of said, we're going in the studio to do this, and and it went to number 1 in the Heritage chart in the UK. Wow. While we were on tour, which was fantastic.
Yeah. So how else do you think the tour compares to how it would have been back in the day?
Well, there's still musicians who have to get on stage, and there's still there's actually a bit more crew these days to help you get your gear about. But I suppose the main difference is equipment is better. Yeah. I think the audience gets a better deal sound-wise, because when I think back to Sweet in the 50 years ago, we would pile all the Marshalls on stage and turn them up, and we would have literally a bank of speakers just for the voices. Wow! So you'd have all this stuff coming off stage. We would probably put a mic over the drums and in the bass drum, but the rest of it, whatever the guitar and bass did, would be acoustically. That was it. There was no mics on that, and there would be 4 microphones through like a PA system that really and truthfully was only as loud as our guitar amps. So you had to have somebody in the hall, because you very rarely did you have these sound desks out the front, like you see today. Yeah. The sound desk was to one side somewhere, and once you'd got the balance at a kind of sound check, if you were lucky enough to get there in time, that's it. It stayed like that for the whole night. night.
Wow.
And it's so that's very different, because now you go and see some bands. I mean, for example, 10cc, they almost sound like the records, because
Yeah.
it's so technically good. I mean, I've been told, when people come to see us, they just kind of say it's the best sound, and the band are, should we say, on form at the moment.
Yeah.
Our way of recreating it is pretty good too.
I'd never really realised that before, about how you didn't really have any sort of soundboard. Would you have wanted to do it in the old way? Because even though the way everybody would do it now would sound better, maybe people would like the nostalgia of how it was.
There are bands that still do that, because you can go into pubs and you'll see bands still thinking that they're Jimi Hendrix, and they'll put a stack of Marshall up there, and the PA within the venue is only should we say loud enough for that venue.
Yeah.
So you'll find that a loud guitar player won't even be in the PA system. So you'll be getting a vibe of that anyway. I think that musicians, when they start to think about putting a band together and going to play venues these days, they automatically get sucked into the fact that, we've got to get there in time to do a sound check and get the monitors right. And there were no monitors when we used to play.
Yeah.
Everything was done almost by a little bit of witchcraft, because a couple of the speakers on the side would have open backs. So you'd get a little bit of vibe as to what the voices were doing. But no, I wouldn't want to go back to that, because my hearing has kind of suffered along the way.
Yeah.
I think any person in a rock band, I mean, I'm luckier than a lot of people. I mean, you think of and you hear about people like Pete Townsend from The Who, about how there was tinnitus and lots of stuff like that. And I know that there are a lot of players that I know who go on stage with those little dB defenders just inside the ear to take the initial onslaught down. I mean, I'm still okay. I'm still producing. I'm still working in studios. But an engineer is helpful, because I know there are frequencies that I don't hear. And one of them is the tambourine and the shaker, little nuances. I keep saying to my engineer, "You've got the tambourine in the mix, haven't you?" And he said, "Oh, yes." And I said, "Okay." Because I said, I can't really hear it,
Wow. So in terms of the pandemic, again, how hard has it been to prepare a tour in these times? Because you mentioned you're isolating at the moment. So I guess at the moment you can't practice, but has it been hard overall?
We still get to rehearse. When I say I'm isolating, I'm making sure that I don't go to the pub. And I'm making sure that I don't go to a supermarket or go... I still go to, if I need to, I still go to see my doctor, or I'll still go to play, like maybe have a hair trim or something. And this is my real hair, by the way.
Wow, it's impressive.
Everybody thinks that I borrowed it from Lady Gaga, but it's isolation from the point of view of not wanting to be in big crowds. And I mean, I am a football fan. I'm a Wrexham supporter, and I've not been back to my hometown for nearly 2 years, and I keep wanting to go back and sit in the crowd and stuff, but I just can't bring myself to do it at the moment. Once I've got this procedure out of the way, like I explained to you, I think things will improve, and the tour at the end of the year, as we say, we just don't know at the moment. I would still prefer to wear a mask going in and out of places right now, but by November, December, things may have changed.
Yeah. So for people that maybe, I guess younger generations, who haven't heard Sweet before, what albums and songs would you recommend to them in particular?
It depends. If you want a hard rock album, then go back to the things in the earlier part of the 70s, like Sweet Fanny Adams or Desolation Boulevard or Give Us a Wink. And then if you want something a bit more prog rock, find some of the later albums like Level Headed or A Cut Above the Rest, something like that. But if you just want a mix, that there are some box sets and double albums and, you know, 4-sided vinyl albums that have been released. One of them in particular was a big hit in Europe about 5 years ago. It was called Sweet, the Ultimate Story. And that, for me, you would get a picture of how the band developed from the very early days to what it is today, because there's something from every era on that album.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that the sound of Sweet has evolved over the years?
Yeah, because I've always said, it's like an egg, you know. Once you've fried it, you know, you can't unfry it and put it back in the shell.
Yeah.
And it's like that when you're developing as a musician. We were a little, you're a little naive when you first start. You're forever trying to think, oh, would that note work with that? And then you realize that somehow discordant things do work, you know, because classical composers do it all the time. You know, they put things down in the bass end that right up in the top end. The notes would jar if they were all in the same register, but they're not. They're separated. So, and a song like "Love Is Like Oxygen" is an absolute example of something like that. But we've developed from this cheesy pop band into a glam rock band, which basically now people call hair metal, and into what I would call an AOR type band, maybe not quite prog rock like Emerson, Lake and Palmer or Genesis, or, you know, maybe not quite as far down the road as that. Oh yes, but we've certainly developed along that line rather than the 3 chords of bands. I mean, I love Status Quo, you know, but I think we've kind of just moved over slightly from that. Yet we were right in the pocket in the mid-70s. You know, there were several bands like Slade, Sweet, Status Quo, even T-Rex. We were all heading down that minimalist chord highway, you know, and getting songs that people could relate to and sing to and dance to back then, you know.
Yeah, and Sweet seemed to be one of the first few bands that come to mind when you think of glam rock.
Yeah, I bumped into, not that long ago, about maybe 3 or 4 years ago, when we were flying out to Germany, Jarvis Cocker, who was doing one of his DJing sets out somewhere in Europe. And we were on the same flight, and we were stood there waiting for luggage. It was somewhere like, I don't know, Stuttgart or Munich. And I'm thinking, I didn't think they were back on the road. And then I realized, he's DJing and stuff. And these two boxes of vinyls came down the chute, and he put them on his trolley. And I was chatting to him, and I basically said, so you bring your own records? He went, yeah. He said, there's a few of yours in there.
Yeah, wow.
He said, if ever it goes a bit flat, he said, one of your songs always brings it back up. And I went, nice to hear.
Yeah.
You know,
your music has survived at least to Jarvis Cocker's era, and then hopefully beyond.
Well, he's a bit of a lad anyway, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you rate any modern guitarist quite highly? I don't know if you listen to modern music, but is there anyone in the charts that you like their guitar work?
That's quite difficult because I can't really get my head round the ones who want to play blisteringly fast and put 1,000 notes where half a dozen would do.
Yeah.
You know, I always sort of hark back to the Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, even Hendrix era, where you make your notes count. You know, I know that a lot of what they did came from the blues, but I think it's probably where mine came from as well. Yeah. At some point in your life, you want to play fast, and of course we all do. And on some of the albums that I mentioned, like "Give Us a Wink," you know, I'm probably playing like these guys in these hair metal bands today, you know, or the guys where you hear this, you know, you might as well have a drill going on your guitar, you know, with a plectrum on the end of it. But I can't play that.
Yeah.
I can't play like that. But but I suppose it's got its place in music, like rap, like everything. But to actually find a guitar player today, I mean, I like Dave Grohl. I think what he's done since Nirvana with the Foo Fighters has been fantastic stuff. You've got melodic songs, and you've actually got the sound of a band, raging, and I like that. I mean, the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but it's the bass player who's the star in that, isn't it? That guy Flea, he's quite something. Yeah. So no, it's difficult. I don't really have much in my iTunes or record collection. I wouldn't say that I go out and buy much stuff anymore. And if I just want to listen to stuff, I sometimes will just put the Beatles on, or the Beach Boys,
Yeah, that's maybe the best thing to do. So after this tour, are there any more plans for future tours, or does it all depend on how well this one does?
Oh no, I think we've hit a seam now. We've hit the ground running. I think that there will always be a UK tour in November, December, unless somebody makes us a better offer and we end up going to Australia when the weather's better than we usually go to Australia. Yeah. But no, why would we change things? And the way the world is, traveling is not the glamorous lifestyle that everybody thinks it is,
Yeah.
When you pass through airports and see people stood there with guns, it's not for me the experience that it used to be. Let's put it that way. Yeah. It's all very well sitting in a lounge and having a glass of something and then turning left on a plane. But at some point, you've still got to negotiate all the other crap, so.
Yeah. Well, just looking at a few dates here, it starts on the 24th of November in Newcastle. Then it goes on to Edinburgh, Lytham, Holmfirth, Bury St Edmunds, Bexhill, Islington, Oxford, Northampton, Manchester, Norwich, Exeter, Frome, Wolverhampton and Nottingham. You're going to be quite busy.
It doesn't sound as dartboard as some of the tours we've been on, though.
Yeah.
We haven't got any Glasgow to Southamptons on there, or Truro to Norwich. It's we've actually it seems to be better planned. I'm afraid we're only doing one in Scotland, and that seems to be Edinburgh, the Queen's Hall.
Yeah.
We normally do at least three, maybe Aberdeen, Edinburgh, and Glasgow, but there's only one on that tour. We did one in Cardiff last year on the last tour, but it seems Wales has missed out again. But Nottingham Rock City, the original band used to play there in the late 70s.
Wow.
So it's really nice to go back to venues that the original band played,
Yeah, that's such a great idea. So, tickets are available on planetrock.com and thegigcartel.com if people are interested. And anything else coming up in terms of perhaps new music, or is it just the performing that's being done at the moment?
Well, we had an album out last year, beginning of last year, called Isolation Boulevard. In fact, it came out before Christmas in 2020, but it was last year where it started to, make inroads. Isolation Boulevard, I suddenly realized we needed an album, and we were working on some new material, but then the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And the only way we could do this was to do things remotely. And I thought, we're not going to make a new album with us all being in different places. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
We like to be in the same place. I want to see the drummer. I don't want to send him a demo and him say, oh, what if we did this? Because all of a sudden you're now in this, like you hear with modern people, they're sending their files everywhere in the world, and in the end you come back with this. It's, for me, it's like having a jumble of wires that you've got to sort out, and I'd rather be organized at the beginning. So we needed this album, and we decided that one of the best ways to go about it was to do material that we were playing live, that we knew. In other words, let's do another, almost like a greatest hits album. We found some drum tracks from live gigs that had never been used. We'd also recorded some new drum tracks when we did an album of covers a few years back. So I was able to pull together from all different kinds of sources and we hit a bit of luck in the late summer when the lockdown was eased for a couple of months. I don't know if you remember this. We were able to see more people.
Yeah.
And the bass player and Paul, Lee and Paul, came down to my studio and we cracked on. We put some guitars, bass, and all the voices down, and then mixed it in with the drum tracks that Bruce was sending us and what we already had. The engineer that I work with is now our keyboard player, second guitarist on the road. He came from a band called the Novatines, and we were able to put this album together, Isolation Boulevard. It wasn't called anything at that point, but I looked at the track listing and then looked back at the Desolation Boulevard album, and I thought they're quite similar. So just off the top of the head, call it Isolation Boulevard, and everybody liked it, so we stuck with that. We've had 3 singles that have gone in the charts since the beginning of 2021. Still Got the Rock, Set Me Free, and Everything. And we still have this new material that we're now working on again to do another album, which will come out in something like September of this year.
Wow.
We haven't got a title for that, so if you've got any ideas, send me a title.
I've got nothing.
And please don't say Keep On Rocking,
Yeah. You must be glad you called it Isolation Boulevard, because imagine if you thought of that name after releasing it, you'd be kicking yourself.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, exactly. I actually think that, that sometimes genius might be a bit slow and works in mysterious ways, but we got there,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, many thanks for coming on the show today. It's been great having you on.
Thanks, and you.